Powerful insights often occur when you least expect them. On Transformative Leadership Conversations, they're at the heart of every episode. Hi, I'm your host, Winnie De Silva, and together we're exploring a spectrum of leadership themes through the compelling stories and insights of seasoned leaders and prominent experts. And in each episode, you'll walk away with inspiration, strategies, and tools to enhance your leadership, build effective teams, and lead thriving organizations. So this month is going to be special. Not only will you get to experience some incredible conversations with some fantastic guests, as always, but we're also exploring in a deep and very scientific way something that every single one of us experiences: stress. Not just the kind that keeps us up at night, but the kind that fuels us, defines us, and sometimes, if left unmanaged, begins to take more than it gives, which means eroding our energy, straining our relationships, and impacting our health in ways we often don't see, sometimes until it's too late. And as leaders, we're ambitious. We want to make an impact and keep growing. But the drive that makes us successful can just as easily become the thing that breaks us if we don't learn how to work with it instead of against it. So that tension between excellence and exhaustion is at the heart of this leadership series this month. And in fact, I'm calling it Excellence Without Exhaustion, and you'll understand why later. Over the course of this month, we'll explore what it really means to perform at a high level without losing ourselves or our health. You'll hear from leaders who have been there, who have lived through the intensity, the ambition, and the pressure, and have learned how to navigate it in a healthier, more sustainable way through scientific data, observation, self-awareness, and some coaching. So in this first episode, I talk with Martin Redigolo, a design and business leader whose career has spanned some of the world's most high-performing environments, from Deloitte to BCG now at Manion, a strategic design consultancy. Martin shares his deeply personal relationship with stress, how it's shown up throughout his career, and what it's taught him, and how his understanding of it has completely evolved. Then, in our second episode of the series, you'll hear from Jan-Philipp Martini, the founder and CEO of Sapiens, a company helping high-performing executives and their teams understand their stress on a biological level, using stress diagnostics, self-experiments, and coaching. And in this episode, Jan-Philipp will share his own leadership journey as a high-performing consultant himself and an entrepreneur, and how a health crisis changed how he leads, lives, and then started a company that helps others do exactly the same thing. Then, in a third episode, we bring these two conversations full circle. In this third episode of the series, we talk with Martin and Jan-Philipp, where Martin shares his own experience with Sapiens using their stress diagnostics, self-experiments, and coaching. Martin shares how this was transformational in his own understanding of how stress plays out in his life. So much so that Martin is now a partner advisor at Sapiens. And then last episode of the series, I'll finally close it with my own reflections on stress, performance, and leadership that sustains us for the long game. There is one more thing I want to mention before we get to my conversation with Martin, and I'm really excited about this. Jan-Philipp, who you'll meet in next week's episode, has generously offered Transformative Leadership Conversations listeners a special opportunity through his company, Sapiens. So for you, whether stress has already started to take a toll on your body, your work, or your relationships, or maybe you're just simply curious about how and in what situations your body responds under stress, well, this offer is really for you. Sapiens gives leaders a way to see and understand what's really happening beneath the surface and to make small data-informed changes that build long-term performance and well-being. So for listeners to this podcast, Sapiens is offering a 20% off their stress and resilience diagnostic and habit change program. Just use the podcast code TLC when you sign up. The offer is valid through the end of 2025. It's a 4-month journey. So just to give you a heads up, it's a 4-month journey that begins with an at-home diagnostic which includes stress hormone and cortisol analysis, ECG monitoring, and recovery analytics, followed by 3 months of expert guided habit coaching and monthly progress tracking. So, even if you're just a little curious or you're still trying to decide if this might be something that you're interested in, you can book a free 15-minute consultation with someone from the Sapiens team. They'll walk you through what to expect and help you figure out if it's right for you. There's a direct link in the show notes to make scheduling quick and easy, or you can visit www.b-sapiens.com for all the details. And you'll hear much more about Sapiens, how it started, how it works, and what leaders are learning from it in the next couple of episodes in this series. And just by the way, excellence without exhaustion is also the tagline of Sapiens, which I thought perfectly captures what this month's leadership series is all about. So let's go back to Martin. So I first met Martin several years ago in Madrid when I had the privilege of working with him and his team on a leadership and team development project. And even then, I remember being struck by his energy, his creativity, and care for people, qualities that really make him both a high achiever and a deeply thoughtful leader. Today, he's bringing the same mix of design thinking and human insight to his work as a director at Manion and as a partner with Sapiens. So here's my conversation with Martin about the real cost of stress, what it reveals about who we are, and how learning to understand it can change the way we lead and live. Martin, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so excited that you're here. And I'm really excited because we've worked together. We worked together several years ago now. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it was several years ago. And I came to Madrid and had the privilege and opportunity to work with you and your team at the time. So I'm excited for you to be here because we're here to talk about stress. You have worked in some pretty stressful job situations and industries, and so this is really, a kind of a unique opportunity for people to hear from other leaders in terms of their own stress experiences, right? And how leadership and stress typically go together. But for you, how do you experience stress? What does that mean, to you? What does it look like for you? So I'm really excited for you to be here. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I'm super excited because I did some podcasts myself, but now I'm on the other side. So sometimes a leader needs to be on the other side
That's
as
right.
well to know what's going on.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Good. So maybe we can kind of start, stress, like we were just saying, happens to all of us. And I guess when you think, I mean, now I feel like you've now become much more aware and educated when it comes to stress, particularly because of maybe your work with Jan Philip, who we're going to obviously talk to later in the series. But how do you think about stress right now? Like, what is when you think of the word stress, what does that mean to you? Is that good? Is it bad? Like, what is it?
Well, I feel like, let's say, the word itself has a negative connotation, although it can mean it's a power that maybe drives you forward or is holding you back in one way or another. And it also can be, that thermometer on a situation that you can leverage to understand better, like how should you maybe move forward to get out of it, or adjust maybe your own behavior. Um, Obviously, when I hear it now, I'm quite detached from the negative side, because I feel like I've been through some situation and I've had the luck to be accompanied in also some of them. So it's like, it's all right that it exists, because I feel more empowered now to manage myself through the situation. But sometimes it's still difficult. Sometimes it can still be, challenging for your own body and mind to kind of get back to balance. So I think it's like it's a learning journey. You never stop learning, most probably also about yourself, as you do in any job or role.
Yeah, no, that's true. One of the things that I know that you've talked about in the past is, not almost not having an awareness of stress. Like especially as it relates to your job, right? You've had the privilege of working with some really great companies doing really interesting work in the work that you do. And so, can you talk about like how your understanding or experience of stress kind of has evolved and changed in your career and what you noticed about yourself or how you get impacted by other people or the environment?
Mm. Yeah, interesting. Maybe I imagine, when I look back now, I feel like in the beginning, let's say the concept of stress, as you were asking before, and as we were discussing, I think it didn't exist in my concept of the world, because everything was excitement. When I was in university, it was the thing that I wanted to do. And when I started my first job, it was all this new world, and the colleagues, they were super nice, and the clients, and everything was just this forward driving power, which maybe you could, or you might call it stress, but maybe it was this excitement and emotion and passion on that new thing. But obviously I was I would say as anybody, in a junior role. I was a newbie, a new kid on the block of the working world. And then I would say over time, as obviously, you become more senior, you go through different situations, you observe maybe also situations that are not yours, but you feel like, okay, this is definitely not easy to maybe discuss or go through, or, etc. And I feel like as you progress in your own career and others as well, obviously you take on more responsibility, and maybe, with the growing up this responsibility ladder as well, the expectations change towards you. And this might change how you also think of yourself, how you have to deliver. And that obviously turns then into, okay, you have more responsibility, not only on your work, maybe, as you grow more senior from a junior role, you are maybe more responsible on your job. However, when you become maybe a manager, which happened to me at my time at Deloitte Digital, well, then you also become people responsibilities. And suddenly it's not only about this craft anymore. It's about, what people feel, and why do they show up like this, or maybe why don't they show up? And suddenly, here can be a conflict, and you have to praise them. Suddenly there's all these new things that you also have to manage, that you've never gone through before, besides maybe observing them from the outside. And this, I think, can generate, a new perception of oneself when it comes to, oh my God, this is totally new. This is not excitement right now, because I feel like this is not something that I like, you know. But the expectations from the outside require me to respond and maybe handle it. If you're lucky, you have people that surround you, that support you, and I was in that lucky situation. However, you have to kind of resolve it on your own.
So can I jump in here? I love your description because tell me if this is what you're thinking. What I'm thinking as you're talking is that when you start out, you use the word craft, like you have an expertise. And even when you start out new from university, yeah, obviously you don't have deep expertise, right? But you're focused on developing an expertise and you have it, right? But like you said, when you switched over into managing other people, people are like, the biggest sort of unknown and cause of difficulties and challenges and stress, right? Much more so than our craft or expertise, right? So you're right. In some ways, what I almost thought of as you were talking is that it's almost like this area of like control. Like, in some ways, you're potentially losing control from going, like, I have control over this craft versus like people, like, this is harder to like manage. There's this control issue that when it comes to working with people and being a people leader, that's really different. And it sounds like that's when you became maybe a little bit more of your stress. Is that true?
I mean, it's not that let's say, it's not that people responsibility suddenly created a new account in my body called the stress account. you know? But it's true that in my personal reflection, and if I would look at myself, it feels like I am a person that I would say I'm highly collaborative. I like to be with people. I like to interact with people. When I got people responsibilities, I really want to make it good. I really want to be a good leader, a good boss, a good colleague, a good, collaborator. And this, I would say, caused stress in my case.
Yeah, so actually I remembered what I was gonna say because it's almost like the expectations of others. Is that was also something that was also
I mean, it's both. I would say it's the expectation that now this is your team. You have to go and work with it and run it. And we expect the results coming out of this group, and you are the leader. And then there's the expectation that, in my case, I would say causes this tension, internal tension, part emotional, partly mental, because I want to make it right because it's my level of expectations that I have towards myself, right? So I want to be my best benchmark, and suddenly, I feel like, oh, this is so tremendously hard. Will I be able to do it? Can I give it? But maybe, the situation can't wait and you have to resolve it. And maybe you resolve it not in the best way. And then you leave like, oh, this was not the best thing that I did. And then you keep like processing what happened and why, and you replay. And this is sort of what then keeps me maybe up at night, like, oh, did I do it good? Did I do it not good? What would I do differently next time?
it's almost like that combination of, like, being a people person, caring about people, right? And having high expectations of yourself that you want to be a good people leader, you want to do well, by the people that you work with to help them do their best work, but also, manage them well. Another thing that I know you've talked a lot about are your values, and that plays into this. How does that play into all of this in terms of and maybe even as it relates to stress? I don't know.
I would definitely say that once I was made aware of these, let's say, made aware of these values, not because someone told me these are your values, but rather we discussed through it, and that was a task that I had to think of at one point in my career. And then I felt like, okay, now knowing this, now what I perceive as very important for me in my life, that obviously you bring yourself to work, it's part of you, um, suddenly becomes an ingredient to if you feel good or not good in a specific situation. And with this list of, let's say, 5 values, more or less, maybe, or 6, depending on everybody, can be different. But suddenly you realize, yes, caring is very important for me, or let's say, love to the next, etc. Right? So, like, really, I want that everyone around me feels good. If this is not caused by myself as a leader, or if this is not caused by the environment, suddenly I might feel stressed because it's like, oh, I really want to achieve this. And in my role, it might be my responsibility, my task to achieve it, right? Because we want to be the best place of work. We want to be the ones creating the best annual employee survey results and stuff like this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Carry this somehow through the whole year, and the years like, oh yeah, the next survey is coming. Oh, we have to do it right this time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But that plays into that, help me connect the dots between like your values and what you learned about like how you maybe experience stress. I don't know if there's a connection. Yeah.
Let's say if, in my case, for example, fairness is an important thing for me in life, right?
Okay. What can you tell me what fairness means though?
Yeah, so fair, I mean, is it fairness like when a situation or a person is evaluated correctly by situations?
Okay,
Or how do you
got it.
call it?
Good.
It is it not fairness?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, okay. To be fair, let's say,
Yes.
on
Good.
situations. So I need to be, let's say, I want to have fairness in the world. That's something I try to generate and receive. So if in a situation at work, for example, I don't see fairness and I have to ensure that there's fairness in between 2 members, or maybe in between, or with my line manager, or, towards someone else, suddenly if this is not being generated in that very moment, or I cannot influence it in a way that I understand I have to, suddenly there's this disconnect, and then it comes back as, let's say, stress for myself. Because then it's like, me thinking through like, okay, what do I have to do to make it right? What do I have to do to correct it? What do I have to do to make it next time, in a different way, And this is sort of when the disconnect in between what I perceive as my value and an important element to myself is not existent in that moment. And in a work environment, that obviously comes back as something that I feel like, okay, I have to resolve it sometimes with more or less time. You have to think through it, you have to prepare for it. And then maybe, it causes a sleepless night here or a couple of difficult situations or, all these things.
Yeah. So in your career, like early on, it was like in some ways like good stress. I'm sure we're going to get into some more technical, concepts later on, but like, there was some good stress. Like you're excited, I want to do this. This is something that I'm learning. This is great. And then working with people, you loved working with people and it was good, but there was a lot more added stress because of your own expectations, expectations of the organization that were all coming into play, and people are complicated and it's hard, right? And then what happened after that? Like, what did you notice about your own responses to stress as you continue to become more senior and as you continue to take on more responsibility? What other things did you notice about yourself, as you responded to stress?
um, I mean, obviously you notice maybe, well, there are two situations maybe. One is that it's basically a situation that happened in a previous work environment. I started a new job actually, so it was in, let's say, halfway through my current career, right? So I was some experience. I was not a manager, but obviously there was lots of interaction in between the team members, etc. What happened was that it was a big change because I switched from one, let's say, industry, creative industry, to another design and creative industry. And for me, that was a situation where it was like the new opportunity, basically, an horizon, of a new journey, a new life. So I started again, like super motivated, like every day was, just amazing with the new experiences and topics. But I knew that I was sort of new in that topic, right? So I was just starting something new, and it was a new experience that allowed me to grow in the long run. So in the beginning, I was in a good mood, smiling a lot, laughing a lot, da, da, da. But over the first weeks, basically, I realized, okay, I did not have maybe enough skills already required, and what the expectations were towards me that was required. However, I mean, if you go through all the interviews and then they make you an offer, it should be clear for both sides, what are we agreeing on? Okay, and there was clarity. However, sometimes interviews maybe might not be enough, and then you just start the work.
Well, can I also just point out, like, when you start a new job, like, you're on a learning curve, right? So even if, you're qualified for the job, it doesn't mean that it's gonna be easy to learn for whatever reasons, right? Yeah, so you're on a learning curve, and that can be stressful.
But let's say the work field was quite distant. It was, let's say, basically changing from a creative agency to suddenly consulting. That's different.
Yeah, totally different.
I knew the different ingredients, but no one had ever told me, or I had never learned how do these ingredients taste different if you combine them completely differently, right? So basically, over the first couple of months, my smile turned into like being like really internal focused. I mean, I tried to keep in my own stuff for myself in that sense, but I was working myself through a situation that was not comfortable because, again, I had my own benchmark set. I want to do this right. This is a new opportunity. I want to achieve it. And then there was this external expectations. Yeah, but you have to deliver on this. But I also was not giving enough help in that moment. So let's say in that moment, and again, that was the first time I had experienced something like this in my career. It was like 10 years more or less in. I could not describe it as I can describe it now, right? Because the let's say what I understand now is like that the stress that I accumulated turned myself into a person that I would describe, that's not me, obviously it's me, but it's like I don't want to be this. I don't want to be this. So it was a new discovery, right? Uh, and I felt like I was let's say I was in my own way. I was standing in my own way. Sorry, I was standing in my own way. I could not sort of progress as I wanted, and this caused like a kind of a bit of a stress loop of I don't see myself progressing as I want. I cannot contribute as I want. The feedback that I get, let's say, is not the one that I want, that actually would motivate me. So I kind of, realized how this load, this load of stress kind of slowed me down a lot. Then, suddenly you cannot think the same way, in an agile way as you are like when you're in your flow state and when everything's like happy and colorful, right? So we really like the machines slow down. Maybe there's like sand in the in the machine. It's not. And that was a, let's say, some kind of revelation on, okay, this is definitely a different type of energy that goes now through my body that I have to manage. And it took me a while. Let's say that work relationship ended on both sides because we realized it's just not working. And then it took me a while sort of to obviously process the situation, find trust again in myself, because it's like, this thing like, okay, I did not achieve it, but the feedback from outside was also, hey, it was not only your fault, blah, blah.
Yeah. But but when you're in that kind of situation, it you're right. I mean, it's interesting because I was actually just doing another podcast episode, but kind of similar to what you're talking about, which is that, when things are happening on the outside, it tends to you tend to blame yourself, right? Or not all of us. Sometimes we blame other people, right? But it sounds like you were sort of in a situation that was really difficult and you weren't getting the support that you needed. You were learning something new. You were getting feedback that was pulling you down further. And it's almost like you couldn't, like you said, you couldn't think straight. You didn't feel like yourself. You didn't feel like Martin and the person that you wanted to be. And it sounds like you weren't able to really process that and disconnect from it until after you left. Is that true?
Yeah. Actually, when I got out of the situation, let's say when the work relationship stopped, I felt like this was not what I want, obviously, to experience. In that case, in that situation, I had enough trust that I can resolve it myself. So I did not go, to a doctor, or I did not, take whatever medicine, or I don't know what. I felt like I can get out of it, but it's sometimes very difficult. Just like, I mean, many situations require different solutions. But in my moment, I felt like, okay, I think I can do it. I trust in myself I can do it. Hopefully it will pass soon. But it was a lot like, regaining the trust in yourself, because it was just let's say an overall disappointment combined with that load that you took with yourself. And then you have to kind of, just let it pass.
So it sounds like in some ways, on top of maybe other things, but the way that stress was showing up for you in your life was to break down, it started to break down how you even viewed yourself and how you viewed your capabilities and like your even professional competencies. Like that started to sort of erode how you thought about yourself and how you responded to the world and to yourself.
Yeah, and I would definitely say, I mean, there are people who might not even think about it, but in my case, I'm very, let's say, reflective, maybe on situations like this, because again, if I go maybe to the idea of justice, I want to understand what's this justice piece in this situation? Like, why did it happen? Why this and not that? And that suddenly that keeps you kind of going, and it keeps you going in the sense of like, you have to get out of this loop. Maybe in over time, I learned tactics and tools to kind of I can apply to just break that loop and get out of it quicker. But at that time, no one, I did not have a coach. I did not have other people, let's say, in the sense that were knowledgeable enough to kind of guide me through this and take me out of this.
So what's exciting about this whole series this month is that we're gonna have a chance to talk with Jan Philip, and talk about his company, and then we're gonna talk about after you met him and what you learned through the diagnostics, and coaching that you did through Sapiens. So we're gonna get to that in kind of the second half, but I guess I'm kinda curious for you, up until that point, what did you Um, what do you wish that you would have done in those moments? Because like you said, you didn't necessarily have an external perspective or external people helping you process it, essentially, right? Um, for people who are maybe in a situation like you know what I mean, that are listening right now, who are kind of maybe in the middle of stress or have just come out from a really stressful situation, what would you recommend? I mean, aside from going to talk to sapiens, which we'll talk about in a minute, right? No, but for real. You know, how do you sort of manage this time of like, you know, realizing like, wow, I am like under some stress or I need to recover. You know what I mean? Like, what do you recommend?
Might be very difficult, to apply it straight away, but I think hopefully that person keeps trusting in him or herself, right? Because it's very important to not disconnect from yourself to be able to make the next step forward. Maybe it's not straight in the best direction, but you sort of need to move away from what keeps you in that uncomfortable state. When you move away, maybe and hopefully, I would say everybody has at least one trusted person close. That might be, even if it's a work environment, hopefully it can be really a coworker who has this level of trust, or maybe a friend or a family member, just because you need to kind of offload the 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 feelings, the words, the things that the voice is saying in your mind, all of this stuff. You need somehow a bucket to offload all of this additional weight that you're carrying. And maybe sometimes, and there are other tactics. Some maybe recommend writing down your thoughts, in the morning, in the evening before sleep, so you don't kind of carry these ideas too much with you. Um, and I would also say, I realized that let's say when stress hits you, I mean, not always in that worst case scenario, but I would say having a routine throughout the day gives you structure and clarity. It's like, if your mind is a mess, it's good to have order around you, right? Because then you don't have to care about the things, that if this is right or not, or the I don't know, the washing machine, or I have to the kids. If this is sorted, then at least everything that you perceive through your visual senses seems ordered and clear. And then you can take care of what's not in order, maybe inside of you, being that the feelings or the voices, or you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that was a beautiful thing that you said, you know, is to not don't stop believing in yourself, and really get out of a situation that's, you didn't use this word, but like it's a negative environment, right? That's causing, um these thoughts potentially, right? Or continuing on with that stress that is really kind of bringing you down. Because if you stop believing in yourself, then you can't really come back to yourself, to say, okay, like let's and I mean, I assume that doesn't mean that you don't take responsibility where responsibility is necessary either, right?
No, no, no. I mean, definitely you need to be responsible with yourself. And maybe, I mean, as long as you're not really living on your own and you have no other stuff to take care of, then maybe it's fine. But obviously you have more responsibilities than only yourself, and maybe even yourself, to keep yourself in order is also responsibility towards everyone around you.
Well, but the other thing that you said is find other people, right? So, make sure that you're finding other people to connect with, like you said, personal or professional or both, right? That can help you even just get everything out somewhere else, not in your head. Definitely highly recommend that.
I mean, hopefully, that person that is close to you is more of a coach or mentor than an advisor, right? Because
Yeah, right.
we getting more and more, you have to do this, you have to do that, and then maybe it's like, this drives me even more crazy.
That's a really important distinction. Yeah, the difference
Look for a
between
coach, even if that's a friend or a family member, yeah, but not an advisor.
yeah, because I think what you're saying is when you're under that kind of tremendous stress, the first thing that you probably are looking for is someone just to listen.
Yeah, or sometimes it's like, oh, give me the answer. I have no, you know, bandwidth left to think about anything.
Yeah, right, right,
But
right,
okay,
right.
that can be different. But I think it's not, let's say in any learning journey, I would say, and maybe the self-awareness and discovery, it's more like if you can work yourself out of the situation, maybe with help, maybe without, whatever, the the result is more sustainable in the long run because you have learned to get out of it or you have been guided out of it. If this just like as if you would give your kid an answer right away, they don't have to apply their own brain power to resolve the problem. If you give them, different angles to solve the problem or ideas how to address it, suddenly they find their own solution, and that learning lasts forever, most probably.
Yeah, absolutely. When you kind of look back at your own story, and you look at the times that you were in these situations where you felt stuck in the stress and it was really impacting you, um, you haven't really talked about the physical impacts that you had. Did you have physical impacts, or was it more psychological, or like how did you break that down in terms of how stress was impacting you at the worst moments?
I mean, physical per se, I was lucky not to have. I think that can be really, kind of damaging and adds another, like, oh, I cannot eat well right now. So you're getting like, oh my God, it's like stuff like this didn't happen. So I'm lucky on this side. Um, but maybe I would rather say maybe on the mental side, I realize, just you get either slower just because like your engine is running.
It's like a constant hum, right?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you kind of you get into the red area of your engine, and that heats up too much, and suddenly obviously the brakes are not working anymore. you know
Yeah, it causes breakdowns.
fuel is not being burned well enough anymore. So I realized that this had an impact on how I can perform, right? And then suddenly maybe in that other situation from before, I felt like it was terribly hard to just produce one slide because I was so overloaded mentally, I could not think clear enough. So obviously, let's say if that is considered, then now let's say that's considered a physical side effect, then that was a side effect how I perceived stress, right? And that could be like also like, I mean, not only like on the craft side, but when you're maybe on the people side, on the people leadership side, maybe that's done. Yeah, you have to sort of you have to engage, or you have to you know direct your people. You have to be the boss of your team, and suddenly then it's like, oh, I really have to go through this situation right now. And then again, you have to kind of find the right words. You have to be human centered and employee centric. Exactly. So you work sometimes against, or I realized how you work against your current mood, but then it's like, yeah, again, it's expected that obviously you address these situations, that you resolve them maybe, but one thing that helped me a lot, I must say, in a very difficult situation in the past was, let's say it was another coach saying, this is your role, just play your role. Don't take it personal, but as I'm a person who is people oriented, it's like clashing with this idea of, no, just pretend you don't have feelings. Okay, I can't, and some people are good at it, some people are very good, I would say, in that, or they have it, but they can suppress it really well, or they can just, this separate one situation from another. In my case, let's say I still feel a lot. Okay, I care about the human being, so I cannot just pretend not to care somehow.
So did you take that advice, or
Yeah,
how
yeah,
was
yeah,
it
yeah. Let's
helpful?
say it was the first time I heard about it. I internalized it really, like, okay, this situation will be very difficult, but I have to, just think of this is what I have to do now, and this is what expected, and it's on the job description. If it happens, you have to do it.
So did that help you just kinda get through that situation, or did it help you be the leader you needed to be in that moment despite the stress?
In the moment and for the future, I would say, because it's that piece of learning that sometimes someone has to give you from the outside because you would not find it yourself. So and that helped me let's say, confront the situation, go through it, which still was difficult. But the second time, let's say that similar situation came again with different person, I managed it totally differently because I had taken this advice with me. And then, you can just say, okay, now I feel like most probably I've grown somehow through these difficult situations.
It's almost like, the strengths that you bring to leadership, Martin, are the things that, can potentially be stumbling blocks. Like, you care so much that in some ways it's like, wait, it's so don't care so I mean, not that you shouldn't care, but, like, don't, like, maybe take everything personally, right? That it's not about you, it's about that person responding to you, you representing, the company or the boss or you're the boss, you know what I mean?
I mean, we talked about it also in the past, like, if we want to talk about a piece of content that also kind of influenced me, it was Radical Candor from Kim Scott, as we were, in that moment discussing. Because that, I think, is exactly the point where you do not lose the human side, but you also have to kind of differentiate what is not comfortable for you, but it should not become, let's say, chronic stress or repetitive, a repetitive stressful situation for you. And you have to learn it maybe, from one or two or whatever situations that you have to go through. But it feels like, this is that type of learning that happened in my case. And then also suddenly, that book appeared and I read it and it was quite enlightening. So it was helpful, to kind of stick the pieces together and now see a picture coming out, as a leader.
Yeah, because I think that is, a little bit of the work that we did together was that whole idea of, like, how can you, care about someone and yet also give them difficult feedback, right? Or exchange difficult feedback because that can be part of actually caring about somebody, right? Even though it can be stressful and feels like, am I being as caring as I want to be? I mean, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's just two, let's say, two opposite elements that, like, they attract each other, but they also, they just repel each other.
Yeah. Right, right. Exactly, exactly. So Martin, this has been really interesting, and really helpful to hear kind of a little bit about your story. We're going to hear more about your story, but a little bit about your story in terms of how you experience stress, how you thought about it, what it meant to you personally, right? Because like we've said, and I think everyone is clear about, but like we all experience stress differently. What stresses us is different from one person to another. So it's really interesting to hear your story and like how stress manifested and manifests for you. In another episode coming up, we're going to actually hear a little bit more and go deeper about what you learned once you came and did some work with Sapiens, and how that really educated you in terms of what you learned about yourself. And almost like, I mean, this is what I'm excited to do because we haven't done it yet, is to actually like how learning the science and learning like terminology and like these are like these this is data. Like this is science, right? And how you applied it to yourself, because I think that will be really fun to talk about because I'm guessing that much of what you've just described now, you were able to then you were able to put all that into perspective once you learned, some of the things that you learned. Is that am I accurate there?
Absolutely. I mean, if there are so many hidden spots, I would say, on yourself, but you believe that you know yourself, and you also trust yourself because you maybe think, I know myself. But I think if someone or science shines a totally different light on on yourself, and you suddenly can see yourself in a different perspective, in a different, yeah, through data, as you are mentioning, and actually an expert sort of can explain it to you what's behind these numbers that sound so strange. And I would say everybody in their life most probably have done a blood test and saw the sheet of all the different values that come out of that result. I mean, if no one explains this to you, you, you cannot do anything with it. But once you can learn about it and interpret the data correctly, then you can take action. Obviously, course correct if something is not so well.
That's right. Good. Okay, good. So we're going to end here. Thank you so much. And we're going to bring you back. So you haven't heard the last of Martin, because we're going to do exactly what you just described, right? Really kind of understand Martin's story, but from a different perspective. So thank you. We'll have you come back again very soon.
Thank you for having me and for letting me share my story.
What I loved about my conversation with Martin is how open and honest he was about his relationship with stress and what he's learned through his experiences as a leader. He reminds us that stress isn't just about pressure or workload. It's about the stories we tell ourselves, the expectations we carry, and the ways we try to keep it all together. So next week, in that episode, we're going to go even deeper with Jan-Philipp Martini, the founder and CEO of Sapiens. He'll share his personal journey from thriving in a high-performance consulting career to facing a health crisis that changed how he defines success and led him to start Sapiens. And don't forget, as a listener of Transformative Leadership Conversations, you can receive a 20% off the Sapiens Stress and Resilience Diagnostic and Habit Change Program, plus a free 15-minute consultation to learn more. Just use the code TLC or visit www.b-sapiens.com for details. You can also find more details on Sapiens and this offer in the show notes. If you're ready to take your leadership to the next level or empower your teams for success, I am here to help. Reach out to me directly at winnie@winifred.org or check out my website at www.winniedesilva.com to learn more about my work in coaching executives, developing critical leadership skills, and working with clients to build effective teams. You can also find me on Substack, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I'd love to hear your reflections or suggestions for future topics, because you are always welcome to take a seat at the table where every conversation has the potential for transformative change.